So this is our Coil project number 2. Our country is Egypt. Egypt is located in the northeast of Africa. Egypt is also bordered by the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. Egypt is largely dominated by one ethnic group, which is the Egyptians, but there are also two smaller groups, which are the Berbers and the Bedouins. The main religion in Egypt is Islam. 90% of people are Muslim, and there's around 8 or 10% that are Christian. The ancient Egyptians were black Africans.
What do cities look like in Egypt, and how do you envision people's lives there? 40 years ago, Egypt started an ambitious program to build new cities. Egypt exists for 95% out of desert. With the exception of the small cities around the border, most cities are around the Nile. This is because the land around the Nile River was fertile, so people naturally started living there to grow crops. The cities also grew because of the accessibility through the river. The cities grew so much that they took over most of the fertile land, so Egypt started building in the west, conquering the desert. In the cities you find a lot of 4 to 5 level buildings. This is because it's difficult to transform sand into ground where you can build on. The cities rely on cities around the Nile because nothing can grow in this area. But because of the pollution of the Nile, the ground is also getting polluted in these areas. The cities in the desert are only accessible by car or bus. 10th of Ramadan is such a city. It is described as a blue-collar city without culture or finesse, but is appreciated to open space, the organization, and the quiet. The people that moved there in the 70s and 80s had a hard life and they could only rely on themselves. That is still noticeable in the entrepreneurship of many in this city. The city 10 of Ramadan is described as a success, even downtown Cairo, even though downtown Cairo is only a 1 hour drive. People ready to stay in their own city. They feel free and the air is clean. Cairo, on the other hand, smells not so good. Some Egyptian even said, Cairo smells like pigs. Cairo is a city with a population of 20 million people. The actual population is much higher due to legal immigration. Tourism in Cairo is very big, and it's also notable in the streets. Cairo has always been the educational center of the Arab areas, so it's no wonder that there are a lot of students in Cairo. I think Cairo, besides the looks of the city, is not a lot different in comparison with other cities around the world due to globalization. I think they have a good life if you have a decent amount of money, but you have a hard one if you don't. Cairo is not very attractive to me. This is because I don't like big tourism and cities with like 20 million people. The cities in the west seem more attractive to me. This is because I have the image that the gap between rich and poor is very small in these kind of cities. Because everybody there comes from hard-working families in the 70s and in the 80s. Also, the entrepreneurship speaks to me. These cities also seem to have more community-like living, which I also think is a good way to live.
It's very difficult for an outsider to tell what small towns look like in Egypt. To try and solve this, I have viewed a number of vlogs and read stories about the smaller cities in Egypt. Through these ways, I discovered that there are many small cities in Egypt, such as Sima, Marsa Alam, and Kasha el Farafa. Marsa Alam is a real tourist attraction where you can snorkel and dive. The western desert of Egypt is one of the most arid areas of the world, apart from a little rain on the coastal strip. The Siwa are the inhabitants of Egypt's Siwa Oasis, which is also known as the Jupiter Ammon. They live in a somewhat compact walled town and in a number of outlying villages. Although their native language, Siwa, is a Berber dialect, it's not closely related to the other Berber languages. The Siwa Oasis lies 70 feet below the surrounding desert. It's only accessible by a fjord that is wedged between sandstone hills and worn into fantastic shapes by wind and weather. Inside the oasis there are refreshing pools with groves of olive trees and date palms. The Farava has a population of more than 20,000 people. However, most of them originate from the Nile Valley and they went there to work as farmers. There is also an important agriculture project in Farava, covering more than 10,000 hectares near a well called Bir Karawan. Until recently, all the routes going from Farava Oasis or from Al Bayaria or Al Dakla were not paved and travelers used to suffer a lot to reach this unique oasis. However, nowadays there's a good network of roads that connects Farava with the other western desert oases and the Nile Valley as well. The capital and the most important town in Farava Oasis is the city of Qasr Farava. This is the most ancient part in Farava Oasis, and in the 19th century it was the only inhabited city in the western desert with a population of only 200 people. Many tourists chose Farava today as it started being famous worldwide for its quietness and the warm weather. People from North America and Europe come to the oasis to escape from the cold weather in their homeland and also to enjoy the wonders of the western desert. If you look at how people live in the smaller cities, then you mainly see that the farmers are very active in these cities. In Siwa, the agricultural work primarily is done by the men. Siwa is also known for the date trees and the olive oil. In addition to being known for mass tourism, Marsa Alam is also known for its various markets. In addition, there are also many Bedouins. These people are the mainly desert residents and usually live a nomadic life.
Celebrations. Coptic Christmas. An estimated 8% to 10% of Egypt's populations are Christian, and the majority practices Coptic Orthodox Christianity. Coptic Christmas follows the Julian calendar instead of the Gregorian calendar that places Christmas in December. By fasting for 43 days, people are primed for a feast. It is held on 7th January. Ramadan. June is the Islamic holy month of daytime fasting and evening feasting, which call Ramadan. The dates of the festival change every year. Locals and streets are quiet in the daytime as people are fasting. Historical sites will operate on limited hours. Travelers are expected not drinking, smoking, and scoffing down street food in public during daytime hours. If you're interested in culture diversity and traditions, the festival is enriching and fascinating. Festival of Breaking Fast. The festival marks the end of Ramadan and is celebrated during the first 3 days of Shawwal, the 10th month of the Islamic calendar. If you travel during this period, you will likely to be invited to share in the meals and festivities with locals you meet along the way. Islamic New Year. The first day of the Islamic New Year in the month of Muharram is known as Al-Hijra, which will end on September 22. This day represents the journey of the Prophet Muhammad from two of the holiest sites in Islam, from Mecca to Medina, in 624 CE. Hira itself means migration in Arabic. Coptic Orthodox New Year celebrates the beginning of the year 1732 on the Coptic calendar on September 11th. The celebration honors the millions of martyrs who sacrificed their lives as sacrifices of love for the Lord, who sacrificed himself on our behalf.
Okay, so some common norms that we were able to research are that Egyptians tend to stand very close when communicating, which requires a minimal amount of personal space. They are accustomed to reject any offer the first time it is asked. They will make an offer once out of politeness, but will offer a second time for a genuine request. Um, Greetings are depending on the class and religion of the person that they are meeting with. When greeting same sex people often kiss on the cheek while giving a limp handshake. When greeting the opposite sex, a woman should offer a hand to shake, or the man will give a slight bow. Honesty and sincerity are shown through eye contact. Long stares during conversations are very common.
Ethnic Egyptians constitute 95% of the Egyptian population. The other 5% is composed of minority groups such as Berbers, Nubians, Bedouins, and Copts. E- Egypt is a highly populated country among Arab countries. It is the third most populated country in Africa after Ethiopia and Nigeria. Arabic is the official language spoken in Egypt. The majority of the population in Egypt speaks Egyptian Arabic. However, Saidi Arabic is widely spoken in the Upper Nile. Siwa language is common among the Berbers, and Nubian language among the Nubians. Bedouins are ancient people who originated from the people of Arabian Peninsula. Bedouins tribe is composed of different tribes from many regions of Egypt. Women in Bedouins culture have the responsibility to demolish and assemble the tents whenever they migrate. Jobs in Egypt include bakers, priests, soldiers, farmers, fishermen, hunters, and artists. Eating is an important social activity in Egypt and central to marketing special events and ceremonial occasions. The most important food item in daily life is bread loaves. In rural areas, bread is usually baked by women in mud ovens. Egyptian music began to be recorded in the 1910s. Street music and pop Arabic music are popular in Egypt. Shabi music is popular, which is a musical genre.
Architecture. Egyptian art and architecture. The ancient architectural monuments, sculpture, paintings, and decorative craft produced mainly in the Nile Valley regions of Egypt and Nubia. The course of art in Egypt paralleled to a large extent the country's political history. It's dependent as well on the belief in the natural. Artistic achievement in both architecture and representational art aim at the preservation of forms and conventions that were held to reflect the perfection of the world at the moment of creation, and to embody the correct relationship between humankind, the king, and the pantheon of the gods. For this reason, Egyptian art appears resistant to develop in the exercise of individual artistic judgment.